Just before she died, the former Graceland maid who was close to Elvis Presley for 10 years finally spoke out, and what she said shocked everyone. Nancy Rooks kept the king's secret shut for more than 40 years, not letting anyone know what really happened at Graceland. But now her last words are all over the news. She said, "It's time to tell everything." What came next wasn't the warm memorial that everyone was hoping for. But before she died, the former maid at Graceland finally told the truth about Elvis. It's not good. What did she see? Why did she not say anything for so long? What life was like inside Graceland? Nancy Rooks saw Elvis Presley as a man before everyone else did. She didn't meet him in a place with bright lights or a packed house. She yawned and met him in the kitchen in pajamas, asking if there was any bacon left. She was hired to clean and cook at Graceland in 1967. Her job quickly changed into something much more personal though. Over the years she became a regular part of Elvis's private life. She saw everything, from intimate breakfasts to angry rants that happened behind closed doors. You could say that Graceland was a maze of feelings as well as a house. Elvis would pace through the halls at 2 a.m. some days, quiet and deep in thought. On other days the house would be filled with music, and Nancy would join him in the kitchen and sing. His favorite kind of music was gospel. He would scream, "How great thou art," and smile when Nancy joined in with a frying pan in one hand and a towel in the other. Everyone knew who he was, but to her he was just Mr. Elvis. He always said thank you, and please. Nancy will never forget that. In the end she would say that he was raised right. They were always polite to her, even when things were crazy, like when the phone kept ringing non-stop or when people kept coming and going. That didn't mean life at Graceland was easy though. Nancy worked strange hours, often late at night to accommodate Elvis's unpredictable schedule. If he got up at 3 a.m., she was there with her apron on, ready to make bacon, biscuits or sweet potato pie for anyone who asked. She did a lot more than just clean. He sometimes had to take off his pants while she helped him with them. She put his clothes out, put his personal things in order, set up his pool area, and got used to living in a place where day and night often blended together. The life of Elvis was not normal at all. Nancy got used to it without complaining, but no one knew what she saw. She wrote a book called Inside Graceland. Elvis's Maid remembers years later. It was full of love, laughter and soft-spoken memories. Never make a fuss or pass judgment, but she still kept some things from them. In quiet conversations, she said this. She promised to keep some things to herself for as long as she could because she didn't think the world was ready to hear them. Not out of fear but because they love you. Still her fans were waiting for every word she said. They were interested in what Elvis wore, what he ate and how he acted when the cameras were off. Nancy told just the right amount of information to keep people interested while also keeping the man behind the myth safe. She remembered how clean he was, and how he often took several showers a day. She also remembered how he liked his bacon fried hard and his eggs scrambled just right, and she remembered how his eyes always looked around the room like he was looking for something he couldn't quite name. But what Nancy gave the world that was most important wasn't something small. It was perspective. Elvis became a person again through her stories. It wasn't an icon, a joke or a disaster. A man who cried, laughed and ate too much. He also didn't want to talk to anyone for hours at a time. Even though he was famous, he kept a small group of close friends and family close. Nancy Rooks was an important part of that group. She never tried to be the center of attention, but that changed as her life was coming to an end. She began to hint that there were still facts to be told, parts of the story she had kept secret. People who knew her best started to wonder what she had been hiding all these years when she said, "It's time to tell everything." What did she see in her last days that she chose to bury? In the early hours of August 16, 1977, or at least it looked like any other morning when it began. Like most people, Elvis stayed up late. At the end of the night, or rather the early hours of August 16, 1977, he played racquetball with Ginger Alden, his fiancée, and his cousin Billy Smith. She was already in the kitchen when he came back into Graceland. She saw him standing on the steps, always polite even though he was tired. Like she always did, she gave him food. Elvis said, "No, I don't want anything to eat now. I only need to sleep. I'd rather have some water though." At the time, Nancy didn't think much of it. That night was hot, and he had just been busy. Pauline, another maid, was sent upstairs with ice water and a jug with a handle that used to hold orange juice. It wasn't a big deal. It was just another quiet conversation in a house full of them. But Pauline still thought something was wrong. Elvis grabbed the jug and drank a lot of water very quickly. Afterward she said, "I never knew him to grab that water and drink it like he did this morning." Nancy did not care about it. "I think he's just tired from racquetball," she said. But the moment stayed with her in the back of her mind. She heard a big thump from upstairs around 9:30 a.m. It wasn't really a crash, but something didn't feel right. She stopped, waited, and then listened. But there were no screams, calls for help or other noises. It was just quiet. The kind of quiet that you tell yourself doesn't mean anything. She then went on with her work. It wasn't until almost 1:50 p.m. that the phone rang. Ginger's speech was very shaky and hard to understand. "Who's down there? There was a bad event up here." It was cold for Nancy. "What is it?" she asked. After that, Ginger began to cry. At that point, Nancy knew it wasn't something small. It wasn't broken glass or a fall. There was a big problem. When she dropped the phone, she ran up the steps, her heart beating fast with each step. She went down the hall, and into the changing room. Elvis was lying face down on the bathroom floor, not moving. "Oh my God," she said in a whisper. "What is this?" She didn't scream. She wasn't frozen. The Memphis mob was waiting for her when she ran back downstairs. It was important for everyone to know quickly, but as they realized what was going on, chaos slowly took its place. It was time for the ambulance. A lot of people became scared. No, Nancy didn't. The doctors didn't even know how to get around Graceland when they got there. Nancy walked with them and showed them how to carry the stretchers up the stairs and around the hallway's sharp corners. She led them by showing them the way. She saw Elvis one last time when they finally caught him. Afterward, she said that he looked like he was asleep, but he had already died. His face had blue spots. After that, things moved quickly. Lots of people, sirens, and news cars. It was sad that Elvis Presley had died. She had lost Mr. Elvis though, the guy who once asked her to sew up his pants while he laughed. She stayed out of the way while the story made news all over the world. The official word was heart attack, not a thing more or less, but there were still some things that didn't feel right. Around the room, people talked about pillboxes, dates, and what really happened in the hours after Elvis drank that water until Nancy found him on the bathroom floor. At the time, she didn't say anything. She held it together and let the police do their job. But many years later, she would go back to that morning again. She wasn't going to stop after seeing what she did this time. She would talk about what she thought, what she felt bad about, and what she might have hid without realizing it. The lies she told for many years. Nance Rooks didn't say anything for years after Elvis died. It wasn't that she didn't have anything to say. She did, but because there were lines in Memphis that you just didn't cross. Not after someone like Elvis Presley changed your life. Fans had come from all over the world, just to stand at the gates of Graceland. People would cry when they talked about the king, like they had lost a brother, a friend or a part of themselves. Nancy knew that sadness. She told others about it. That may be why, for a while, she decided to keep quiet instead of letting people guess. But sometimes quiet is enough to say a lot. After Elvis died, Nancy kept working for the Presley family. She worked to turn Graceland from a house into a museum, but tourists, reporters, and even most of the staff never went into one part of the house. Elvis's private rooms upstairs. Nancy said that the bathroom and bedroom were only cleaned once or twice a month to keep the dust away. It was a rule that no one could talk, stay, ask questions, or make comments. You clean, then you leave. But something changed in her every time she walked through those rooms. She looked at the same floor, hall and bathroom at the end of it all, and every time she wiped down a surface or folded a shirt, the morning would come back to her. She talked about it in public very little, and not in detail. In the 1990s, she wrote a biography inside Graceland called Elvis's Maid Remembers. It was full of kindness and memories. A lot of funny stories were told about his favorite foods, music, and odd hours. But the last part, which was the one everyone really wanted to hear, was strangely vague. At first glance, that seemed like enough for most people. But for those who knew Nancy well, there were small signs she would pause during talks when certain topics came up. Her eyes would wander. People said she once said, "If people knew what I know, they'd never hear his music the same way again." It wasn't a threat, it was a weight. Over the next few years, more questions came up. Why did people have so much trouble figuring out when Elvis died? Why did several prescription bottles seem to be taken away from the scene before the police arrived? Why did so many changes have to be made to the lab report before it was made public? Also, why did people who were there like Nancy never fill in those blanks? The truth is that she had tried in secret, and softly. A few close friends said she had told them things over the years, but always asked them to keep them secret. She said that the Memphis Mafia didn't want the cops to look around in that bathroom because there were things that shouldn't have been there, and Ginger was too upset to explain. In fact, one story says that Nancy was told to clean up before the rescuers got there, but she never said that herself. But time made her weak. Nancy wasn't angry. She was just carrying a heavy load, and when she was older, and was told she had health problems, something changed. She said, "I did my duty for the family, but I think someday before I go the truth needs to be told." This was just a year before she died. It wasn't a threat, it made me feel free. In Nancy's book, everyone always thought she told the truth. What if the part she left out was the most important one? Could it be that she saw more that morning than she told anyone? What if her quiet wasn't just out of duty, but also out of shame? Even though Elvis had been dead for decades, Nancy's last words started to sound different, not sad. She had spent her whole life respecting the man she worked for though. In the end though, she gave the impression that she might have been hiding some of the facts to protect his legacy. She wasn't sure if that the last statement was the right thing to do anymore. Nancy Rooks said something quiet, but shocking right before she died in 2022. She didn't send out a news release or shout it from the rooftops. That wasn't her style. But the people who knew her well knew her, say that something happened in the last few months of her life. She thought about things more and spoke up more. Then she said something that no one thought she would say from the woman who had kept Elvis's secrets for more than 40 years. It's time to say everything. Her friends and family didn't understand what she meant at first, but it soon became clear that she was finally ready to let go, not for fun or recognition, but for peace. Nancy had always spoken out in support of Elvis. Her sweet stories, funny memories, and everyday details about her life made his fans feel closer to him. But she hadn't told anyone what she thought really happened in those last days. She had kept it secret. One friend says Nancy told them that Elvis wasn't feeling well in the weeks before he died, which was much worse than what the public thought. She supposedly said that he was having a hard time. It was getting late, and he was tired of the medicine and the act. She went even further. Nancy said that Elvis was taking medicines that were either not authorized for him or were being given to him by people close to him without the right kind of supervision. She said that she saw new bottles in the trash almost every day that summer. She also said that Elvis had fallen asleep in strange places, like in the middle of a talk, a meal, or even a sentence. She thought it was just being tired at the time. She was afraid it was something much worse now. Nancy also told the truth about something she had never talked about in public before. After Elvis was found on the bathroom floor, what did happen? As usual, Nancy ran upstairs when Ginger Alden called downstairs crying and saying something bad had happened. She saw that Elvis's body was lying face down and had stopped moving. It was then nature took over. She ran back down to tell the Memphis gangsters about it. She didn't say who told her to clean up a bit before the ambulance arrived, though she didn't question it at the time. She cleaned a desk, moved a towel, and put some things in order. It seemed safe. She thought about what she might have done when the media storm started and questions about pills and schedules came up. She was said to have said, "I didn't know what I was hiding. I did what they told me to do." The water he drank too quickly, the thump she heard that morning, and the short attempt to clean up had been in her mind for a long time. She kept telling herself it didn't matter for years, but in the last few months of her life, she wasn't sure.
After writing her book, she never said out loud the thing that changed everything. That's when she told someone. Elvis wasn't dead, no one could stop him from going away. That line stuck. This is why Nancy's close friends and family say she seemed heavy in her last days, not because of what she had done, but because of what she hadn't said. She didn't say anything, so did she help protect Elvis or the people who let him get away? Now that those words are out, it's time to say everything. The subject of discussion has changed since the late maid at Graceland finally told the bad news about Elvis before she died. It's not that he was a bad person, it's that the people around him may have let him down. There were signs. Since Nancy was always quiet, she had seen too many of them, and lied for too long about it. The damage, no one was ready, not everyone was happy when they heard that Nancy Rooks had left behind more than just a cookbook and some nice memories. It came in slowly, just like how she always did when she walked through Graceland, present. Being aware, but never too loud. But when people found out what she had said, or at least what she seemed to have said, shock spread. Fans were split. Some people wouldn't believe it. They saw Nancy's book as the truth. It was simple, loyal, and not controversial. It was also their last tribute to a man they believed in. But now that same loyal maid was said to have said Elvis didn't just fall down, he faded. Even worse, she may have helped clean up in a way that made the scene easier for the police to handle. The thought that someone close to Elvis had changed proof, even if they didn't mean to, hurt feelings that were already there. There was never a good reason given for the deaths. Yes, a rapid heart attack, but the mix of drugs in his system, the late call for an ambulance, and the fact that there wasn't a full unredacted lab report, all came back to the surface with new anger. There was a lot of talk about it on online sites. Biographers and people who have studied Elvis for a long time rushed to re-evaluate the timeline. Nancy had been told to clean up, but what? What did she really see that morning? Who, if anyone, had told her not to come forward sooner? But some people praised her. They thought her being honest at the end of her life was a brave thing to do. After years of protecting the Presley name, she may have understood that telling the truth and showing respect were not opposites. Elvis fans should know that he wasn't invincible, that even kings fall, sometimes slowly and sometimes quietly, and often with the help of people who are too scared to step in. There was no noise at the Presley house. It wasn't said anything. People could still go on trips, buy merchandise, and hear Graceland's music. Some of the staff who still worked behind the scenes and knew Nancy said that things felt different now. What they did was wrong, but they did it out of love for the man who used to call them family. She didn't have a media tour, interviews, or a best-selling autobiography. All she had were a few words. Those words were whispered and passed along by people she trusted. They hit her harder than any story. She didn't have to blame anyone. She didn't have to say names. She only told the truth. That was enough to change the way people thought about Elvis's life and death. Too many people saw it happen, but no one was brave enough to stop it. It wasn't just a disaster. Nancy had been quiet most of her life, but now that she was dead, her voice was heard loud and clear. How heavy what was left behind was. In the end, Nancy Rooks didn't cause any trouble, and she left behind quiet, heavy questions, the kind that stay with you long after the news has stopped. No one's heritage, not even Elvis's, was something she wanted to destroy. She most wanted to protect the man she knew, the one who sang gospel in the kitchen, and asked for his bacon to be crispy. On the other hand, truth can find its way into even the safest lies. Nancy never told anyone that she knew everything. It wasn't her job to investigate. She wasn't a doctor. She cleaned, cooked, and saw something bigger than herself. But that's what made her message important. There was no need for her to lie. She didn't need to come up with anything new. Her truth was strong because it was based in reality, and she was there. She wasn't blaming anyone when she finally said, "It's time to tell everything." Her words showed that she understood how quiet can feel like betrayal, even when it's meant to be kind. Nancy thought for many years that by keeping some things to herself, she was respecting Elvis. But as she aged, she learned that respecting someone doesn't mean acting like everything was fine. After she died, there was a complex picture of Elvis, and the world he lived in preserved. People were afraid to question routines and prescriptions were given out like candy. Even the loudest people around him didn't always speak up when it meant the most. Fans who thought they knew the whole story now have another part to think about. It wasn't because Nancy revealed a secret plot, but because she showed what it was like to live after someone else failed. What it means to feel guilty about something you didn't stop, even if you didn't fully understand it at the time. Nancy's last thoughts weren't a new version of Elvis. They showed that both heroes and the people who work for them are real people. That sadness can turn into quiet, and that silence can last for decades, and that sometimes telling the truth isn't about putting someone on the spot. It's about getting out from under a story you've been carrying for too long. She's no longer there. That last morning she brought him water and showed the paramedics how to get to the second floor. The woman who did these things is no longer here to clear or explain, but her voice lingers. It shows up in quiet statements, unfinished sentences, and the choice to speak up just once before the end. That might have been the strongest thing she ever did. Do you believe Nancy Rooks kept quiet for too long, or was making her last confession the only way to truly respect the man she never stopped looking out for?